Okay, this is where we say hello, good evening, and welcome to all of our YouTube viewers, which is very exciting. For the first time, we've gone live on YouTube. And this is the Jewish Schmooze Live. It is part of the Jewish Views podcast, so do make sure that you download the entire programme when it's released later on this evening. The idea of the Jewish Schmooze is very simple. We want you to join in with the discussion as it unfolds. If you watch us on Facebook, you'll already know this, but if you're watching us on YouTube, you might not. So please do join in as we go along, and your comments may well get read out. In the meantime, we've got one or two things we just need to set up very quickly first, and then we will begin. Hang on in there.
Hang on in there.
We're hanging on there. Our YouTubers.
Very comfortable.
It's a very male bastion tonight, isn't it? There's not a lady.
Very male bastion.
Yeah.
Yes, very.
The BBC? Oh, that's
Can't mention BBC. Oops. What did I call it?
Can I remind you we are live, Jeff?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, be careful what you say.
Yeah, nothing naughty. Allegedly.
We should remind everybody that we're not always a male bastion. We do have
the occasional
the
female.
female. In fact, last week we had two.
We are very equal.
Yeah.
We try to be.
I mean, in terms of 1984 equal.
Yes, some are more equal than others.
And that wasn't 1984, was it? That was
the Animal Farm.
Animal Farm. Yeah. Exactly. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, it's definition of communism, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't
We're all
exactly.
equal, except I'm more equal than you are.
Exactly. Was that one of Churchill's?
No.
No, okay.
More likely
not
Khrushchev,
one of those
I
great,
think.
although he would have approved, and so would Ronald Reagan, but anyhow.
Yes. Of course, you're our Churchill expert, aren't you?
I am indeed,
We're not talking about the dog.
That's quite funny. Or the car insurance. Which I may not be renewing this year, depending on their ridiculous fees.
Oh, I change company almost every year.
Yeah.
I think the last 2 years I've been with the same company because they came out cheapest. But
within the next few months, I'll be taking my advanced driving test.
Advanced, all right. Does that give you cheaper insurance?
It can do, yes. So when I pass it, I'll just phone up and say, "Oh,
yeah.
Well, we can't do that retrospectively. Tell you what, I'll go somewhere else."
That's right. No, let you.
What else should I do? What are the tips have you got? You know,
no.
Tony's tips.
No, have a tracker fitted. Sometimes they do this. The insurance companies do this to see if you're a safe driver.
Oh, that's good, isn't it? I just mentioned 1984, and you want me to put a tracker in my car?
Well, it clocks the way you drive.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, that is so Big Brother. It's unbelievable.
I know.
And you people buy into this nonsense.
Hold on, what have you got on your phone? What apps have you got?
Absolutely,
They're
yes.
tracking you all the
yes,
time.
of course they are. But I mean, you know, don't encourage the swine.
It's when the head of Facebook puts tape over the camera on his computer in case anybody starts to look in and hack his computer. I mean, that is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's not good. I think we need to be.
I do the same.
We need to fight back. Actually, I think
against the system.
Against the system.
Yeah. Let's rebel.
You know, no. You don't. No, you don't rebel. No, this is where David Icke is quite right. You don't rebel. You just don't comply. You know.
Good idea.
Is that before or after you've turned into a lizard, or?
Oh no, we're all lizards. We all have reptile brains in the back.
Did he turn into the lizard? Did he go from the lizard into
You should listen to more.
David Icke?
I think he listens to the lizards.
I don't know. I think he's writing his
memoirs. It's a very short book.
Yeah.
Well, an American and a Russian friend are talking, and this is the 1980s, they're talking about the respective nature of their political systems, and the American guy says, you know, I love American democracy. I can go to Times Square and I can shout, down.
We'll never know the end of that
To
story.
be continued. No, to be continued later.
To be continued later.
These poor people on YouTube will never hear the end of it now.
Oh dear. Okay, right, let's begin.
Have you finished your memoirs?
Yeah.
You must know, I was spreading the word on social media about us being live. There we go. Okay, let's begin.
Let's begin.
You're listening to the Jewish Views, and this is the Jewish Schmooze, the part of the show where studio guests join me, Clive Roslin, to discuss matters that you've been hearing throughout the programme so far. Joining Tony Honigberg and me today are journalist and author Jeremy Havadi and corporate presenter Jeremy Jacobs. Two Jeremys. The subject today is based on what we heard with Phil earlier on. The Israeli government plans to expand and upgrade the non-Orthodox prayer space at the southern section of the Western Wall. This is a stark contrast to reports a couple of weeks ago that suggested the plans had been put on hold. The question is, who's right on the Great Wall debate? Those in favour of equality or those in favour of tradition? Jeremy Havardi, let's start with you. Who do you believe is right in this debacle, and why?
Well, I favour the argument more in favour of equality, and that's simply because I think that this space, the Western Wall, Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, is holy for all Jews, or at least it may not be something that all Jews gravitate towards, but it's a space that I think all Jews should be able to go to, regardless of their denomination. They should be able to go there. They should be able to experience the vitality of where they are. They should be able to pray as they see fit. And I think therefore all this is doing is simply recognising that orthodoxy, which has obviously dominated Israel's religious structures since the founding of the state, cannot really have a monopoly anymore. There should be space and recognition given for other denominations who wish to access that place.
Do you believe that, Jeremy Jacobs? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, but for different reasons. And what I don't like is this whole separation with women as well. You know, I mean, I would like to go further than Jeremy. I think it's quite right and quite wrong that the orthodoxy should be, you know, all we see is these people praying, and I think that there's too much domination in that part of the world. I think it should be. Everybody should be there. I don't know whether denominations are the right word, Jeremy, but basically, hang on a minute, Tony. You know, the point is, you know, I think women should be there as well. And it should be mixed.
Well, women are going to be there.
But I'm not mixed, not separate women this and separate.
What I was going to say was that this has been a tradition for thousands of years, even before the State of Israel was formed. They separated, and men and women have been separate. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just trying to put the point forward that this is how it is. And does it make a difference? Does it make any difference? I mean, if I go to Jerusalem and I go to the wall and I might say a prayer or two, yes, I'm United Synagogue. No, I'm not Orthodox. But they don't question me because I just go down there and I just do whatever.
I would suggest because you're a bloke.
Yeah, but my wife goes and she doesn't get questioned either, you know. So do we need this other completely separate bit to say, well, this is reform or progressive?
No, that's ridiculous.
But this separate bit is going to allow women and men together, I take it.
That I don't know. Yeah, I'm getting a nod from our producer at the girl.
That's the answer to that particular.
Yeah, so that answers Jeremy's question.
I think the whole wall should be mixed. That's what the point I'm making.
Why?
Well, why shouldn't it be? I mean,
yeah, but because
it's a 21st century.
But then you're separating the Orthodox. You'll have the argument from the other way round, then, won't you? They'll say, well, we're Orthodox.
Exactly, you're there by
surely everybody has a right to be either Orthodox or liberal or reform. And the Orthodox should be allowed to have it done in their way, and the liberal and reform should be allowed to do it.
And what about the non-Jew that wants to go there?
Exactly.
Which they do, of course. They go down to the wall.
It should be open. I said this whole. I don't like this whole.
Are non-Jews allowed to go to the Orthodox end of the wall?
They do, yeah. I know people that have been to Israel and they've gone down to the wall.
You're not asked
they wear a
whether
kippah.
you're a Jew or not.
They wear a kippah. They don't ask to see your operation.
Yeah, but you can have non-Jews going to Jewish services.
Yes,
right,
that's right. As long as they cover their heads.
What difference does it make?
I'm not saying they're going there to pray, they're going there to experience
but,
it.
Jeremy Havardi, you more or less pointed this out, that in fact the history of the wall is so huge and so old that there is a great point from the Orthodox point of view, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. Look, obviously tradition has reigned in terms of how it's been laid out, in terms of the separation of men and women, and in terms of how it's been governed, if you like. And that this is simply in a way challenging that, and it's recognising that we don't want to alienate people who revere that site and who want to go there and who want to visit and who want to pray, and they simply need a space that actually will recognise their perspective, and if it's doing that, then I think I can understand it. Otherwise, people may well feel sort of rather alienated in a way when they go
Which
there.
They have done up till now. I think they felt alienated because the reform did use the space for a time being, didn't they? And then they got thrown away from it, and now it's come back.
So what's going to happen now? Do you think? Do you think that people are going to fight against it or are going to accept it?
Well, I honestly think that Orthodox, yes, the Orthodox establishment will fight against it, just as they'll try and fight against every attempt at somehow removing their jurisdiction over Israel's religious life. I can definitely see a long-standing rearguard action of one kind or another. But ultimately, you know, if this is what the state wants, it should prevail.
I'm just going to interrupt. I've had a text in from someone called Between. It says Between Wanderings. This is the name they've given. It says on Twitter, egalitarian access to the wall is tradition. The segregated wall is a relatively recent novelty.
Ah, well, there you go.
So I was wrong. I apologise.
That's like that. Accepted.
Yeah, thank you.
No, but again, it proves my point. You know, it's have we got enough problems in Israel and as Jews across the world? Don't we have enough problems? Sort of squabbling over a wall. It should be for everybody, not just not just the few. If I can quote.
It's because it's the holiest site, isn't
yes.
it, in our religion?
Exactly, and it's been there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and therefore, surely, whether you are whatever sort of Jew you are, if you go to the wall, it's respect to the past that you do what the wall. If it were real,
am I right in thinking that when the temple was there, that the women didn't go in to the temple? It was a male bastion, wasn't it?
Well, I noticed I would think it was. The women probably didn't go to synagogue at all, because it was their job to stay at home and cook and make a home,
make the Shabbos meal.
Make the Shabbos meal.
And we're sort of still there.
Well, we are in some people still are.
I just think I think we have to move on. Is the point I'm making? Otherwise, we'll just, you can't live in the past.
And they are making a point. They are giving part of the wall to people who think
how much
like
is
that.
it, by the way? How much? How
I don't know because I'm not there and I wasn't privy to.
If it was like 50%, it'd be fine.
Got another message here from someone called Jack who says there needs to be a recognition that this issue is one of political posturing and not solely about religion. Bibi has Haredim in his cabinet is primarily about politics. Which
that's
to some extent it could well be.
That's quite a good point. Because in actual fact, I mean, if you think about Israel as a whole, the Israelis are probably the least religious of all Jews in the world, aren't they?
Someone once asked me if we had to go to Israel because of whatever's happening within the world, how would you be? And I said I'd probably be even less religious than I am now. Because I do go to shul. I am shul goer. I don't if I was in Israel, whenever I'm in Israel, I don't feel the need to go to synagogue. Because I'm there.
You're there.
It's surrounded.
You're living the dream.
Living the dream.
So
that's what it was. Yes.
I found this very shocking actually at the time, and a great number of years ago, I went for a radio station to do a tourist program about Israel, a series about Israel. And I went to interview a very important, at that time, important person in Israel. I'm not quite sure what he was now, but he was important. And he said, you must stay for lunch, and I'll take you to, and he mentioned a restaurant. And I said, why are we going there? And he said, because it's about the only, and he laughed, this is the only restaurant in Jerusalem which actually serves the most wonderful shellfish.
Oh, wonderful.
And I said,
What's it called?
I'm very sorry, I don't eat shellfish because I'm a Jew. And he was extremely upset. And he said, you mean you want to go to a kosher restaurant when I can take you to one that isn't? And I said, yes, please. And that's an absolutely true story.
Yeah.
So it does make that something, this argument on the wall, a bit ridiculous.
It does,
I bet it's still there, I wonder.
But Israel generally is so secular, isn't it? So why should the wall not be secular, I guess?
Exactly.
Well, secular, but in a sense, though, doesn't this all tap into a bigger debate, a much bigger debate about the extent to which Judaism, and particularly Orthodox Judaism, should be at the heart of national life? Because, the Orthodox establishment have dominated in debates about marriage and divorce and burial and so on, and there is a movement of Jews who are not Orthodox, and let's face it, that's the majority, who are saying, well, hold on a second, isn't it time that maybe we can challenge their stranglehold on these civil issues and start to recognise that maybe other denominations have their way of doing things, and that should change. And this, I think, taps into all of that.
Do you think it should, the wall then should be for the masses rather than the few?
Yes.
Should they make
Completely.
the decision rather than the few?
But it's interesting, isn't it?
The masses
Isn't that-
being
Isn't
secular.
that democratic?
Yeah, well,
The only, throughout
in a
the
way.
world, the only Jewish sect that is growing is in fact the Haredi.
Correct.
yes.
So, I mean, that points the other way, doesn't it?
Well, not yet, but yeah.
I mean, there's
one
no
second.
middle centre in this country. There's no... Judaism in this country was very much the middle centre and sensible, if you like, in the way that most people are. But no longer is this the case.
But then if
Less and less people are going to Orthodox synagogues, less and less people are going to Reform synagogues, less and less people are going to liberal synagogues, and more people are going to ultra-Orthodox.
but then maybe the war should then be for the Haredi if they're the largest population.
That's what I'm
Well,
suggesting.
they're not.
Yeah, but
They're not.
But they're
But
not
it's-
in
no, they're
Israel.
not.
no.
That's the
Not
point.
in Israel. They're not here. Or anywhere else.
Well, they're growing.
They're growing,
It's growing. The
yeah.
other
Well,
ones
yeah,
are
well,
fading
well,
it down.
they
Oh,
certainly
because
are
they have
growing,
lots
yeah.
of children. You know.
And it still comes. I'm certainly not a member of the Haredi, but it certainly seems to me that the war, because of its history, because it's all that remains of the temple and was built thousands of years ago, should still be treated as a deeply religious place.
I don't think anybody's actually disputing that. I wouldn't, for example, want it to be turned into an entertainment place. Let's say certain times in the year, you can go there and you can have a party there which has no religious significance. I think that we do need to respect it as a site of cardinal religious significance. The question is, should it be run according to the interests of just one denomination, or should it be open to the Jews of all religious persuasions right across the spectrum? That, in a sense, is the issue. And I think
Well, surely the answer is what they have done is that there's one part of it should be for people of less religious aspect, and well, actually, they're not less religious in their view; they're religious in their own way.
Yes. Yes.
But they should be separate from the ultra-Orthodox or the very Orthodox,
Okay.
and who should treat the wall as the wall.
And everybody should treat everybody with respect.
With
their
respect,
own
yes.
respect.
Yeah.
But are they going to do that? is
That's
the
all very well.
question.
That's all very well in theory.
Yeah. In theory,
Sorry.
well,
Yeah.
theory is one thing.
Exactly.
Another one? What do we think of the comment that Andrew Shaw made earlier on in the programme, where he said you wouldn't go to United Shawl and expect a reform or progressive service? It is not the case that the Kotel could be seen as a sort of united or Orthodox synagogue.
That's a very good point, isn't it?
Sorry, is it not the case? Right, is it not the case?
Well,
that the
obviously, if you
Kotel
believe
could
in
be seen as-
going back to the point that Clive made at the start, if you believe
Sorry,
in,
Phil wants me to reread that one,
Oh,
so let me
alright.
say again. What do we think of the comment that Rabbi Andrew Shaw made earlier on in the programme? He said you wouldn't go to a united synagogue and expect a reform or progressive service. Is it not the case that the Kotel could be seen as a sort of united or Orthodox synagogue?
well, I say if you believe in tradition and it should be run the way it's always been run, then I think your argument might be yes. But it's not in that sense a closed space with its own fixed rules. I mean, one could argue that it should be open to Jews of all denominations. Yeah.
Which
Well,
is
yeah,
exactly
but
what's going to happen.
there are
though,
rules
isn't it?
there, but the rules have been man-made rules, aren't they? So
Yes.
if they can man-make a rule, then they can man-make another rule.
But the
to
Almighty
incorporate.
gave us free will.
Yes.
So therefore, we have the free will to do as we think is right. The trouble is, we don't all think the same thing is right. in
No,
this
we all
case.
have our own individual free will.
Exactly.
Yes, and the Reform have their free will, as the Progressive have their free will, and the middle of the road have their free will, and the Orthodox have their free will. So, but open it up to everybody in their own. Maybe you need more than the Orthodox section with the men and women and a lesser section. Maybe you need several sections.
Well, maybe it should. Maybe
Yeah.
there should be one for every form of synagogue that there is.
Yes.
This is the Reform bit.
Is the wall long enough? Or why?
Yes, yes.
And then there'll be other arguments then. No, I don't think. I think the whole area should be open. Anyway, perhaps apart from the ultra religious.
Can
Yeah,
anyone win from this?
Probably not.
No.
Is-
Only our detractors probably. You know,
Yeah,
only-
but it makes for good debate.
But again, what's going
Nothing
you
else.
then got to consider the future of Jerusalem. What's going to happen to Jerusalem in the years to come?
Well, Jerusalem, it's interesting you bring it up, and let's just look at that.
Yeah.
Jerusalem should be an open city, shouldn't
Yes,
it?
I agree with you, Clive. Actually, I mean, much to the chagrin of many of our listeners, but quite honestly, yes, I think it should.
but it should be allowed, it should be open because it is the centre, if you like, of the three main monotheistic religions.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I know. Well, we won't get into the argument on that one because that comes from a different side. But I think 2 out of the 3 religions don't mind it being an open city for that. But I think there's a third religion that won't want it.
No.
But we can go into that another time.
Well,
I think
yes,
that's
we're going
another
to have
story.
to
isn't
because
it?
our time is up. But my thanks to our guest, journalist and author Jeremy Havadi and corporate presenter Jeremy Jacobs. Please do feel free to share your Jewish views with us. All the details can be found on our website, jewishviews.co.uk. And it's time now for our rabbinic thought for the week. We heard from him earlier on. This time it comes from Rabbi Andrew Shaw of Mizrahi, UK.
That was quite a nice debate, actually. Didn't get any.
I enjoyed that.
This could be a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's
There we
okay.
go.
We don't mind that.
Well, that was one
What
of the
you
best.
needed.
That was one of the best reasons that we've started streaming this on YouTube, because we managed to get interaction from Twitter and from YouTube. So thank you very much indeed to everyone who commented along. Hope you enjoyed it. And the beauty of this now is that you can watch it back anytime on the YouTube channel, The Jewish Views. Very simple, really, if you like that sort of thing. Thank you very much indeed to everyone who viewed us, if that's the right way of putting it, watched us, whatever.
Yeah.
But do remember, please do listen to the podcast as a whole, jewishviews.co.uk. But from all of us, bye.
Bye.